This is the first lecture of the class about course material. And in this lecture, I'm going to talk about resources, the financial planning life cycle, and the relationship between money and happiness, because that's going to drive everything that we do in our financial planning. Every financial decision that we make ultimately boils down to our objective of trying to maximize how happy we can be. And it's probably the biggest mistake people make in their finances is getting the wrong objective. Their eyes are focused on the wrong prize, and that leads them to make mistakes. So we're going to talk about that some here in this lecture. Now, you should already have read the textbook chapter about these topics, about resources, utility. Okay, those concepts should be familiar to you. If they're not, then you need to pause the video, go back, read, and then come back and watch this lecture. There will be some overlap between what I talk about here and what's in the book there. But I expect that you've already understand that material before you watch this video. All right, so the book talks a little bit about three different types of resources that are available. Human capital or human resources, that's your knowledge, your skills, and ability. Durable goods is another category. It's the stuff that you use, your house, your car, your phone, your clothes, okay, those types of things. And human resources and durable goods, they both bring us satisfaction directly. We use them and they make us happier. They improve our life. They provide what we call direct satisfaction or direct utility, right? Your ability, if you know how to surf, your skill of surfing, you can go and you can use that skill to have fun, right? That's an example of your human capital directly producing utility for you. Financial capital, however, is different. In and of itself, it's just paper or numbers on a screen. It doesn't actually do anything for you. But we get confused. We think money does produce happiness. We think money produces utility. We think that it does these great things for us because the things that money buys has positive impacts on our life. That means that money gives us indirect satisfaction only. And that's an important difference because what it means is that money is not the same as happiness. There is a connection. There's a relationship there. No doubt that money buys the things that are important to us. No doubt that money enables us to do things that we want to do, provides comfort. It can buy us time. It can keep us alive. We need food, and to get food, we need money, right? It serves an important role, but we need to be very careful not to mix up the money from the thing that's making a difference for us. Okay, and this is important to keep in mind because what we're trying to do, our objective here, is to maximize our happiness, maximize our utility across our entire life. Whatever satisfaction, happiness, utility, whatever word you want to use for it, whatever amount of utility money gives us, we want as much of it as we can get. And that's different from getting as much money as we can get. Okay, those are very different things. However, it's also important that we understand the way in which money is useful to us. How does it relate to our happiness, our standard of living, our satisfaction, our level of stress, our emotional well-being? How does it connect to that? We need to understand that in order to avoid making a mistake. Because if you think that your objective is to get as much money as possible, then you're going to live a life of thrift and squalor, and you're going to be less happy than you could have been. You're not going to take the kids to Disney World because it's too expensive. You're not going to buy a reliable car because it's too expensive. You're not going to buy a comfortable home because it's too expensive. And your constant fear and worrying and niggling over every little penny and dime causes you to be not as happy as you could have been. It's okay to use money. It's okay to spend money. That's what money is for. That said, we can't just go out and start buying everything and spend our way to happiness. It doesn't work like that. Okay? That's not how it works. And so these are two extremes, the extreme savers and the extreme spenders. Both are making a fundamental mistake. They lost sight of their objective and they don't understand how money actually affects our well-being. So here's a survey I found was really interesting. So they asked people around the world, how much net income would you need every year in order for you to be really happy? Okay. These are some interesting numbers. Take a look. I like to talk about the Mexico number when I look at this. So the average person in Mexico thinks that they need 185,000 US dollars a year in order to be happy. $185,000 per year US in order to be happy in Mexico. That's what people think. $185,000. If you are in the United States and you're making $185,000 a year, you are a 1%er. Okay? Almost nobody makes that much money in the US. Okay? That's a very high income. So that means that virtually no one in Mexico is making that money. So does that mean no one in Mexico is happy? Do you see how we've got this sense across the globe that we need lots of money in order to be happy, and that money is the source of our happiness, and why we constantly chase and worry after money and fret about it and sacrifice the things that are most important and most valuable to our mental health and in order to chase money? Clearly, we think that around the world. But is this true? Do you actually need this much money in order to be happy? Well, there's two sort of rungs of research that have happened. Okay? So this is a study where they look at a community, a group of people. They rank them by social status and economic status, and then ask them how happy they are. And so when you see this line going up as you move from the bottom of society to the top of society, you see that people get happier as they have more money and more prestige. So that leads us to think, hey, you know what? Yeah, right? More money means more happiness. Okay? That's one set of results. Another set of results, though, looks like this. When you look at the average of income of people over time, so not just at one point in time, but look across time, here you can see that over time, people's income went up. That's what that income line going up there means. And before you think, oh, this is just inflation. No, they've already adjusted for inflation. So people are actually significantly wealthier. Okay? People in 1955 have a lot less money than people in 2005 had. And yet the percentage of people who report being very happy does not change as our incomes go up. Doesn't change. So this leads you to believe, this money and happiness, there's no connection there, right? They have more money, they're not happier. So we have two sets of data. One set of results say that, yeah, the more money you have, the happier you are. That's this result. And then another set that says, you know what? No, it doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't change how many people are happy. Okay, this is a paradox. This data is conflicting itself. It's called the Easterlin paradox, after the man who first discovered it. And it's very interesting if you want to go and Google the Easterlin paradox, you can find some interesting discussions from economists. So how do we reconcile these two things? For a long time, people were baffled. How could both of these things be true? Well, happily, more recent research has shed some light on the situation. So this is from a 2010 study. And what they found was that the more money you had, indeed, you did experience more happiness, less worry, less sadness, and less stress. Okay, that's what the three colors correspond to. So the higher the line is, generally speaking, the happier and better off people are. But do you notice an interesting trend here? Right in here, in the $60,000 to $80,000 a year range, it flatlines. People do not get happier with more money if they're above this threshold. Now, if they're below it, they certainly do, right? You can see it rising. But after this point, it goes flat. And people do not get happier, do not get less stressed, do not get less sad. So if we take all of this together, what do we see? What does it mean? How do we interpret all of this data? Pull it together. Well, here's what we do. It's called relative income. Let's say I pull up to my family for family dinner, right? And I just bought a brand new Civic. And I'm so proud of that thing. It's shiny, it's new, it's got new car smell. And I walk in and, hey, Dad, I got my awesome new Civic out here. And we're out there and the family's out there oohing and on over it. And I'm feeling pretty good, happy about my purchase. Yep, this is the right car. This is an amazing car. And then my sister pulls up in a new Lexus. And she says, look, Mom and Dad, at my shiny new car. Suddenly nobody likes my Civic so much. Nobody's impressed by it anymore. I'm sitting there thinking, hold on. My sister makes the same amount of money as me. Why does she have a better car than me? Is she better? She's not better than me. Why is my car worse? And suddenly I don't like my Civic anymore, or I like it less than I used to. When we compare ourselves to others, we become less happy with what we have. And so when we look at charts like this, where as income goes up, happiness goes up, this is because people know they're on the top of society. They're looking at each other and saying, yeah, I'm better than them because I have more money than them. Or my life is worse than their life because they have more things that I don't have. It's that comparing to each other that causes us to, at one period of time, say, I'm less happy, right? I'm less happy because my car is not as good as my friends, not as good as my sisters, not as good as my neighbors. My car is worse, and therefore I am not as happy. Regardless of the fact of how good your car is, if you think your neighbor's is better, our natural inclination is to become less happy with our own because somebody else has something better. Now, if you're sitting there thinking, that's a really toxic way to think, that's not a good way, that's... Okay. If you're thinking that's not a good idea to think like that, good. It's not. It's unhealthy. It's not good for us. But it does seem to be the default. It seems to be how we're kind of hardwired to do things. If you want to not do it like that, you have to choose not to do it like that and make an effort to not care and not worry about it. And that's hard. It is hard. Okay? But it's what drives this difference, okay? So what we see from this chart is that once we have enough money that we can pay the rent, we can buy groceries, we can feed our kids, right? We can cover all the basics. And that happens in $60,000 to $80,000 a year range. As of 2010 anyway, that was the amount. Once we can do that reliably, comfortably, consistently, then you know what? More stuff just doesn't seem to make that much difference. People with Lexus are not happier than people with Civics. People with 5,000 square foot homes are not happier than people with 2,500 square foot homes. Now, people with 2,500 square foot homes do tend to be happier than people with 400 square foot homes because they're way down on that lower end. So once you have enough rooms for all the kids and everyone has a comfortable bed and everyone has groceries and you don't have to worry about having the power turned off, and once you get past that level, then the rest doesn't matter. Okay? And so endlessly pursuing, I'm going to buy this gizmo, I'm going to buy that thing. Once I buy this, I'll be happy. That is a recipe for misery because that's not how it works. Okay? Once we're comfortable, we don't need anything else. Okay? Now, let's talk about the financial planning life cycle because this is going to give us some information as to how we should balance our money. Okay? So this blue curve represents a typical income curve for a person. Over a person's life, we tend to start with low income. When we're children, age 10 or 15, right, our income tends to be very low. As we move into maturity and adulthood, our incomes rise. We graduate from college, we get even more money. Right, we have our peak earning years, and our between about 40 and 60 is about when we earn the most money for our life, and then our income starts to decline, and eventually we decide, you know what, I don't want to work anymore. I think I'm tired of this, and we go ahead and retire and stop earning more income. This is a typical earnings curve. Okay? Everyone's earning curve looks different. A professional athlete's, for example, may be very low. And then they get into college and it's still very low. But then they graduate college and get a job at the majors and they're making millions of dollars a year. It's going to go sky high. But professional athletic careers are usually pretty short. So it could be very high, but only for 3 or 4 years. And then it falls back down again. So spend some time thinking about your future career, what you've chosen, what you think. What does the earnings over time look like? Is it a short-lived career? Is it bounce up and down a lot? Right? Take a look. But this is what sort of a typical average type of earning curve. Most people will have their earnings look like this over their life. So let's bring in our happiness versus income chart and see what happens as we move through our life. Now, in early life, you don't have a lot of money, so you're over here in the low income range and your happiness is lower. But as you move through your life, your income goes up, you move to the top ends on the right side of the income chart. And so what happens is you wind up, when you're young and broke, you're unhappy. When you're middle-aged earning a lot, you're very happy. And then when you're old and broke, you're unhappy again. Right? That's what the research would suggest is happening. And so if you just spend what you earn or spend less than you earn every single time, right? Every paycheck, you spend 80% of it, 90% of it, and you never balance it out, that's what happens. You go from unhappy to happy and unhappy again. But what do you notice? When we're in the high income section of our life there, and we're spending more and more and more and more, are we getting happier? Is our life getting better? The answer is no. See how flat that happiness line, that blue line of happiness is? Very, very flat. And so we don't want, it doesn't make sense to spend a ton of money in our middle years and then be completely broke when we're young and when we're old. Right? Because spending more and more and more in our middle years does not give us significantly more amounts of utility. So what we want to do instead is we're going to take some of this money from our peak earning years and we're going to spread it out. Right? And so the book talks about borrowing is just the process of taking future income, bringing it into the present so I can spend it today. Right? If you take out a loan for a car, what you're going to do is you're going to go to the bank and you're going to say, bank, I don't have $30,000 for a car right now, but I do have a job. I will earn that money. And so if you just give me the money now, in exchange, I will give you a portion of my future paychecks. Right? So literally what you're doing is you're taking money out of your future and bringing it into your present so you can improve your life today. Saving is just the opposite. Saving is you're in your peak earning years, you're like, you know what? I'm going to spend a little bit less now so I can save it. And in the future, I can spend more in the future. When I'm old and I can't work anymore, I need more money in my future. And so you make your life worse in the present in order to make your future better. Okay? And if we do that, we wind up with this straight spending line. Okay? And we want to maintain a consistent level of spending across our lifetime. Right? Because when we go up in income, right? When you go from $70,000 to $100,000 to $150,000 that you're spending, you don't actually get any happier. So it makes sense to take that extra money. If it's not actually making your life significantly better, why not take it and transfer it into the future, save it, so that when you become old and your income is low again, your happiness doesn't fall. And so now look what happens when we spend a consistent amount across our life. Notice we're moving across our life, we're spending a nice consistent amount. That's the red circle moving. But our happiness stays right there in the middle because we're spending not a low amount, high amount, low amount. We're just spending a moderate amount every single year. And when we do that, our life overall is better. We don't have terrible times and great times and terrible times. We have good times always or throughout our whole life. Okay? That's the financial planning life cycle theory. Okay? And it works very well. And so throughout the class, we're going to talk about, all right, Unit 2, we're going to talk about borrowing. When does it make sense to borrow? How do I figure out how much it will cost me? And how do I decide how much I should borrow? Unit 3, we're going to talk about saving and investing. How do I transfer my money into the future efficiently? Get the most bang for my buck. Make it worth my while. That's going to inform the rest of our semester. So, in summary, we think we need money and the stuff it buys to be happy. Okay? That's, I hate to say it's not true because it is true, but it's also not true, right? Like most lies, most of the best lies and falsehoods in the world, there's a kernel of truth there. We do need money, and we do need the stuff it buys. But the best stuff in life doesn't have to be expensive. It's cheap. I wouldn't say it's free, but the best stuff in life is cheap. For example, people say, well, loving my children, that's free. There's no money associated with that. That's free, and that brings me my greatest joy, my children. Are children truly free, though? They need food, right? If you don't buy groceries for the kid, I don't mean to be macabre, but no food means no child, right? But groceries are cheap, right? You don't need a $150,000 car to be happy, but you do need a way to get around town and to take those kids to places where they have fun and you can enjoy being with them there, right? So money's important. It does affect our happiness, but just collecting money in and of itself is really not that valuable. And so we need to stop and think, what things truly make me happy? Now, what are some of the most important things literally cannot be bought or paid for, though? For example, money can't make you like yourself. It can't buy you self-esteem. It can't buy you friendship. It can buy companionship. It can buy people to hang out with you, but it can't buy true friendship. It can't buy true love, right? So we need to keep very clear in our minds the difference. What does it buy? What effect does it have? And then identify what things that I spend my money on really make me happiest. And what things do I buy it and I throw it in the closet and I never use it, or I spend the money and I just don't get a lot of value out of it. Those things we need to cut out of our life because they're just wasting our money. And we could spend that money on the things that really make a difference. And the things that make a difference to you will be different than the things that make a difference to me and the things that make a difference to somebody else. And that's okay. Truly good financial planning and good financial management relies on a good sense of self-introspection. Who am I? What really brings me happiness? And can I do that? Can I get what makes me happy for less money so I can make sure that I'm getting all the things that are most important to me and not wasting my money on things that are not actually making my life better? That's a hard question to answer. There's not one distinct answer, but ask yourself that question. Ask yourself consistently through your life. Is this actually making my life better? And if so, is it really worth paying for? Okay, stop looking at the Joneses, right? Stop looking at your neighbors. Stop worrying about what everyone else has. Doesn't matter if their clothes are nicer than yours. Doesn't matter if their house is bigger. It doesn't matter. Do you have what you need? Do you have the things that bring you joy? If so, then just take joy in that. Now, I get that this is not something you can just flip a switch and that feeling goes away. But when you're mindful of it, when you're aware of it, you can start catching yourself when you start to feel bad about what you have because it's worse. And when you notice that you're doing that, in time, you grow to be able to not worry about it so much. Again, it's challenging, but I never said that any of this was easy. If it was easy, you wouldn't be taking this class. Nobody would have financial trouble, right? No, it's tremendously difficult. Okay, keep in mind that money can prevent problems, but it can also cause them. Okay, so don't be so worried about having more and more money or spending more and more money. That doesn't really tend to make a big difference in our lifestyle. Okay. And then learn to live happily with less, right? Just the focus on getting the things that truly matter to you and balancing out your lifestyle, borrowing when you're young, saving when you're middle-aged, so that you can live your best life at all times rather than swinging between stress and poverty and riches and excess. We don't want to swing back and forth. We want nice, steady, consistent standard of living. And that will maximize our lifetime satisfaction for money.